Oh, welcome to a discussion video, and it's something I've just randomly thought out. It's interesting, and it's got me thinking about various things from before, like the Hogwarts Legacy situation. Obviously, J.K. Rowling said horrible shit she's on. But it's got me thinking about this thing about how there's like this correlation between essentially leisurely pleasures, I don't know what you call it, leisure activities, and bigotry essentially increasing. Like, they seem to coincide with each other to an extent, and it's concerning. And the reason why I bring up, as you can see in the title, and sorry there's no video, there might be a video actually, but like, the reason I bring this up is because I've noticed a pattern, and admittedly this is not backed up by evidence. I've tried to look it up, and I couldn't find anything. So at the moment we only have speculation. So yeah, like, I noticed a pattern of bigotry in gaming spaces and, in a sense, like TV watching products. Even like you see it in reviews as well for things. You know, look at the Lightyear movie, for example, that came out a few years ago. I watched it eventually when it came out to digital, because I like Toy Story. I think it's good. It wasn't as good as like 3 or whatever. But also grew up watching Toy Story. That's the other thing. Like, people were making bad reviews on it because of a lesbian couple, and so I decided to check it out myself, see how invasive they make it out to be. And spoiler alert, it wasn't. It was like a 15-second fucking window where I think they kissed. I think hugged and kissed. Like nothing. It's like it wasn't even worth noting for like representation. It's just there. It's nothing. If it was like a main character, although technically those characters related to them is the main character, then it'd be a bigger deal. But even then, it's not even worth noting. So I think people make a big deal out of nothing, and also not to mention when talking about LGBTQ+, it's not specifically about sexuality, it's about romance, and there is romance in kids shows. Like, let's not deny this fact. You know, it's always existed, so it's nothing new. And the people who take issue with it are not consistent with their own belief. So, for example, they take issue with like a couple kissing, be it same sex, same gender, same whatever. But if it's like a normal heterosexual couple with a romantic, straight, whatever, then they don't take issue with it, and it's like, well, hang on, you take issue with this, but not that. So there's inconsistency there, and it also ties down to like this stupid belief that fundamentally they think that LGBTQ+ stuff, like I used to believe, believe it or not, years ago, is fundamentally sexual, and it's not. You know, anyone who's hung around that sort of space would know that it's not inherently sexual. Admittedly, there's a problem with like kink in some areas, but even then, like, it's not even a big issue then. Like, even like, for example, like, most kids don't even fucking know what kink is. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, past the age of 11, it starts to creep up, obviously. People start to realise, and that's it. Every child's gone through that. That's no secret. And so at the point, it just doesn't matter either way. So the reason I bring in like gaming is because in like spaces like r/gaming and even on YouTube, like, I remember watching these horrible channels like I think It's a Gundam was one of them, and The Quartering. They're fucking terrible channels, and they weren't good representation for anyone, not even the far right, which is saying a lot because they definitely align with the right. And it's fucking nuts. But basically all they're doing is spouting bigotry about these games. Although the It's a Gundam channel, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that was one of them. So don't quote me on it. Or do. But yeah, like, it was a huge problem, and I remember the Quarterman coming out with videos like woke people ruining games, and he even took issue with like a game that killed a dog. It's like, or games where you can kill a dog, and it's like, what the fuck are you even doing? You eat animals. Like, why does that even matter to you? It's just fucking nuts how people are so unhinged on the internet nowadays and don't use demonstrable evidence to prove anything. And I'm a big advocate for that. And even though I can't read it necessarily because I have bad attention span and reading abilities, it's still important to me. Because I understand that this is how you progress. This is how you go forward, this is how you prove anything. And it's because of demonstrable evidence that we're even in a situation now where we have the internet. People use it for passing information and also entertainment now, as that's become more prevalent. And so, like, bigotry is a huge issue in the gaming spaces because so many people seem to clutch onto, like, again, woke beliefs as if it's like the worst thing that's ever happened. When the reality is that it has zero impact on anything you do. Look at Baldur's Gate 3, massive success. People enjoyed that, and that had essentially LGBTQ plus representation, I think. There's Claire Obscure, I think, which has someone, could be mistaken, maybe I heard it wrong. There's like plenty of recent video games that are genuinely good and are made by people who are not only progressive but have implemented progressive like traits in them. So again, like, the real bigotry is that you can't respect or tolerate these things without a good reason. And that's really what I'd take issue, and also take issue with the gaming community. I think there's a line to draw between putting something forward as a harmful belief or system and something that's essentially good. There's a complete difference between the two. If you're trying to make it reason that there's something bad, something inherently wrong with something, it requires demonstrable evidence, as I have to keep saying. Although it's probably not just me saying it, it's a lot of people. And because people don't provide the evidence, we don't have an answer. And so people think they have the answer, and that's not actually the case. And in fact, that's one of the most dangerous beliefs today. And it's fucking ridiculous that we're even in this sort of situation to begin with. Yeah, like, one of the things I've managed to make a correlation between is how, essentially, again, leisurely activities seem to, when there's an increase, there seems to be a decrease in critical thinking and sort of intellect, I'd say. And I've noticed this across the board, and like people on our side of gaming, for example, and even the moderators for some reason, they just seem to fucking push this point that you can't bring up politics in gaming, in the subreddit specifically. But at the same time, they're allowing people to do that with articles. It's just nuts. And even though it's pretty much a neutral space in that sense, in at least what's shared and how people can express themselves, there's like a mutual agreement in some cases. But there are others where it's like a big no-no. And for a time they banned Hogwarts Legacy posts, which was fine. I don't think anybody disagreed with that, and only the really butthurt anti-woke gamers were taking issue with that. But then a few months later, they fucking succumbed to that, and it's like, okay, well, you're just openly admitting that you're transphobic now. And people say, like, you can't say that because there's no proof that someone is transphobic because of supporting a game. Well, that didn't age well, because it turns out supporting anything J.K. Rowling has done results in transphobia. And you can see this with her recent post on the UK Supreme Court ruling, where she's celebrating the fact that the Supreme Court ruled that a woman is a biological woman. As many people pointed out in science, I think even people of like religion, like, it's not a fact. Like, they haven't defined a biological woman to begin with, and so it doesn't make any sense. And J.K. Rowling seems to think that a biological woman is one who's born a woman, and that's not the case, because people are born intersex and people are also born with body dysphoria, gender dysphoria, where they don't want to be in that body. And just to know that that's apparently hell to go through, well, I wouldn't know because I haven't had it. I'm not going to dismiss the fact that that's a factor in play here. So when we say that it's transphobic, it's also to do with how J.K. Rowling's funded essentially anti-trans rhetoric and even probably LGBTQ+. And when people bring it, like, a lot of people brought up before when I mentioned this in the subreddit, like, Hogwarts Legacy apparently had a trans character. And I looked it up, and nobody really agreed with it, even the people who were trans. And that was because the representation was terrible. And I don't know the specifics because it was quite a while ago now. There's like so many controversies around it, like I think the Ozcast even, one of the members made an extension for Twitch, I think, or YouTube, maybe it's both. It was like highlighting all the streamers that are streaming it and essentially telling people what to avoid, what the streamers to avoid, essentially. And I think it was a reasonable request. It's not too unreasonable given the reality of the Harry Potter IP. It all funds J.K. Rowling's anti-trans stuff and how she funds all that, really. Or it, I should say, because it doesn't respect pronouns. So why should we respect it? I say it, yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's childish, essentially. Making it fun though. But it's not, and I think well, I've noticed it elsewhere in games. I've seen it in even MMOs that are generally progressive, like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV. That's my recent case. Other recent suspects, I should say. But one of the things that I reported was that information was hard to find, and it was hellish to like find information in Final Fantasy because it was just hidden somewhere and you couldn't locate it. It's like, okay, so how do you do this thing? How do you do X thing? And nobody gives a straight answer. It's just, you have to search for it somehow. It's just, I consider that a form of bigotry itself. You know, I was looking up how to do a boss mechanic in the Eden's Gate, I think, the last one. Where it summons all the Titans and trying to figure out what Titan does what. And, like, the game doesn't do a good enough job of showing it anyway in the first phase, so that becomes an issue. I was trying to look up, like, the codes and stuff, like, how do you figure out the second phase, because it doesn't do it right away. It took me over 30 minutes to find a guide of non-stop searching. And that really shows a lot. And all it took was a diagram. and it's telling you that it could store these abilities. That's just stupid. But it's not only that. It's also when you look for information, and it's like, it shows you the subreddit, and it turns out that these posts are heavily downvoted. Why is that? Well, I saw this post on social autism recently, and I think I was talking about this exact thing that I noticed, and it's about how posts are randomly downvoted for no reason. Even if it's like a good question or a good post, or even like unpopular opinions. Like for some reason people downvote unpopular opinions. When I downvote them when they are. Upvote them when they are. Because that's a rational thing to do. If it's an opinion you don't agree with, it doesn't matter. If it's an unpopular opinion objectively, then yeah, it's an unpopular opinion. Upvote. That's simply how you do it, and one of the things I've noticed is that people seem to take comfort in the fact they can downvote something, think it doesn't have much of an impact, and then move on with it, which is dumb. I think that's a form of bigotry itself. And that's sort of why I bring up bigotry in gaming. And ironically, it's probably the same people doing this in games that are toxic. Like, they make a comment, don't think it has any impact. But the reality is it does. And it does harm people, for real, like physically and mentally. And people might say, like, why do you think physically? Because mental harm can lead to physical harm, obviously. We know that by now. The information's out there. Stress leads to various physical problems like bowel issues, which I've definitely had. Experienced a lot more as I've gotten older. I'm only 28. Am I? Yeah, 28, yeah. I was trying to think when I'll become 30, 2027. But people with depression will experience a similar thing, sometimes worse, and even like being on the medication. Like, again, like, environment can be very much a causal factor, and this is why I bring up this entire video. Yeah, bigotry is an unhealthy thing, and also surrounding yourself in echo chambers is always a terrible way to address that. That's something I noticed when I used to be anti-woke. I thought a lot of people were in their own echo chambers whilst I was in one myself. And ironically, that didn't age well, because I couldn't justify my own beliefs, and so when that was sort of put on its head, I realised I was actually woke, and yeah, that's led me to where I am now, even here, and even finding out that I'm pansexual and stuff. So yeah, bigotry is a real problem in gaming, and I think people generally are not open to beliefs. Like, for some reason, like, I remember like r/Pokemon. It's a very mixed subreddit. It's a similar one to WoW, to be honest. Like, WoW's horrible. Always pushing prestige as like the reason for FOMO. It's like, don't, it's still FOMO. And people didn't like to hear that for some reason. It's stupid, but yeah. I imagine Final Fantasy 14 is the same, sadly. In Pokemon, like, I argued against having two games, and also how bad the graphics are, and also how much I dislike the animating stuff. And as you might expect, it's all been met negatively. And all these people seem to think that they're defending a just cause, in a sense. Because I'm impeaching on their favourite game by saying it's bad. But like, that's an opinion. Like, my favourite game is probably The Witcher 3, still. Even though I haven't played it in years, but I remember it being so great when I played it. And I looked at their negative reviews to see if they were reasonable or not. And like, every one in like 5 reviews would be unreasonable, from what I gathered. Most of them were reasonable because it was like personal opinion. Like, some players didn't like the gameplay, some players found it too long. and I agree with that, and I respect the opinion for that matter. Like, even though I agree with it, I still enjoyed the game. Yeah, and the game isn't without its problems as well. But even with things I disagree with, like the gameplay I didn't have much problem with, I still respect the opinion because it's not for everyone. And like when people are saying Breath of the Wild was great and I hated it, I was met with like tons of negativity, and like only some people actually suggested that I should just stop playing it if I don't enjoy it. And yeah, so I did. So I never touched Breath of the Wild again. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up though. Like, bigotry is a huge problem, not just in communities, it's just even in the player base as well. When I bring this up again, like toxicity, brought this up a while ago. I used to be a very toxic player. I used to sort of harass players into thinking they're bad at the game, hoping they'd stop playing and stop ruining my game essentially. But that was like a very narrow-minded point of view and very selfish. And one of the things that got me to realise that was someone who actually spoke up and said something reasonable. And that was like when I was throwing in Overwatch competitive matches just to get the currency. Someone said like it was when I was trying to get back up to get the currency, because for some reason I had stupid currency. They said, how would you like it if you were on the receiving end? Wasn't in exact words, but it was similar. And it's just like, holy shit. I began thinking on that, and I realised I was wrong. There wasn't any good reason for toxicity, and let alone harassing players. So I just started thinking like, how do I improve? How do I get over this sort of toxicity, this rage? And I realised that the one thing that people weren't doing is helping. And like this player sort of helped me try to realise that toxicity is wrong inherently. It's basically taught me that you can help players to sort of mitigate that. Instead of sitting there in silence, like again in Reddit, like downvoting posts and stuff, you make a point to help someone. And there is a bit of trauma about that actually with me, like sort of related to it. TF2. I was trying to help a player in MVM once, and yeah, I got harassed by a player with 10,000 hours and 2,000 tools. Fun. Not really. But that did sort of put me off it for a while, and thinking about it, I was still doing the right thing, and I think the guy with 10,000 hours is just a cunt. Hopefully he's still not playing TF2, it's whatever. I refuse to believe someone's human until they prove it. Yeah, like a good antidote to toxicity other than playing casual games and trying to find something that sticks and leads to you having fun. And it's also about trying not to let others ruin the game for you as well. Because there's like definitely cases of that when the game's fun and then people become ruin it. Deep Rock Galactic, still a fun casual game even at highest difficulty. Some people do ruin it, unfortunately. It's like a higher rate, the higher difficulty anyway. Same in Final Fantasy 14, it can be. It's also not about not having a selfish point of view. If you're trying to compete to get something like a gold weapon or super rare mount, for example, that shouldn't be the focus. It should be having fun instead, and helping others as well. Like you might be a goal-like at mechanics, for example, in an extreme trial in FFXIV, but in reality, like if your team's wiping, then the only thing holding you down is the advice you give, or if you've even given any at all. The same with dungeons, same with most things. And I do get it for people who have anxiety, I definitely have that. There's definitely a way to sort of communicate that sort of thing, and tell people what to do. Well, like not tell them, because I think people for some reason associate that with like forcefulness. Is that a word? It's like you have to sort of give them advice. I think that's probably the better way. And they're like the hard help, and it even helps someone like me who's still relatively new to the game. You know, I've even done it for like groups that I've led, like doing Blue Mage. You know, we tried to get a J kick and learn that spell. And we had to do like this Alexander raid. And I memorised the mechanics while playing it and also looking at a guide because I tried to get it on my own, but it didn't work. It's fucking annoying. But I told people some of the mechanics to look out for. Boss shoots a laser every now and then in front of the raids. The white robots come out and aim in all directions and dodge them, and J-Kick initiates when the boss jumps up again at the second phase. Yeah, and I think we did it first try. That's the importance of really giving advice. It's not difficult, and some people will fail, but again, that's sort of the point of live and learn. That's life. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. Thanks for listening. See you on another video, maybe.